who is sitting there when jury has to bring us reports. So we're going with coverage nonstop here. We have this story covered, and the report is that there is a verdict. And so Judge Mark Norris, a former state senator who has become a federal judge appointed by President Trump several years ago, is now overseeing this trial of 3 former officers who are in major trouble for the death of Tyre Nichols.
And none of those 3 officers testified in this trial either, although one attorney did promise that one of them would testify, but it ended up that none of the 3 former officers testified on their own behalf.
That's right. So the Tyre Nichols family has been notified, and they have been summoned to federal Judge Mark Norris's courtroom, and so they are headed there along with our team.
They just arrived on the scene there at the courtroom. So we should be getting word. They should be getting soon to let us know what the verdict actually is.
That's right. So it was a 3.5-week-long trial of the 3 officers, and they each had their defense counsels, and the prosecutors did their closing arguments yesterday, and they were quite forceful.
Right. You're looking now at a live picture outside the courtroom where this trial took place earlier. We probably should give you a background in case you don't. Most of you know at this time that Tyre Nichols was pulled over for alleged reckless driving in January of 2023.
That was January 7th, 2023, and he told the officers he was on his way to his mother's home, and it was the Scorpion 1 unit that pulled over Tyre Nichols on that fateful night of January 7th, 2023. And we have all seen, as this jury has seen, countless numbers of videos of the assault that was laid into Tyre Nichols. He was kicked, punched, struck with a baton, pepper sprayed, and suffered injuries that ultimately cost him his life.
And there are concerns now that the officers are on trial now for excessive force and also for failure to render aid are the charges against them, conspiracy, and
that's right. And so Tyre died January 10th, 2010. A medical examiner testified his cause of death was homicide, blunt force trauma. And there we see some of the timeline. So the traffic stop for reckless driving, January 7th. Tyre died at St. Francis Hospital on the 10th of January. On the 20th, the Memphis Police Department fired the 5 officers from the Scorpion 1 unit. And then January 26th of that same year. So literally within 3 weeks of this incident, 5 former officers were indicted in state court and charged with second-degree murder. And then in January 27th, 2023, the city of Memphis released the video, and we were all on the air here. Kim, you and I and Joy Redmond witnessed that video's release as we narrated it, along with all the viewers who watched in horror as what unfolded.
You mentioned the Scorpion team. Now, the Scorpion team stood for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. The officers were on trial, were part of that Scorpion unit. They looked for drugs, illegal guns, and violent offenders.
That's right. And so there were 2 officers who pleaded guilty after the indictments came down.
There were a total of 5 initially.
That's right. And so 1 pleaded guilty last year, 1 pleaded guilty this year. And so there have been a grand total of 3 officers from that Scorpion unit who have been on trial in this case.
And those 2 officers who've pled guilty testified against those other 3 officers.
That's right. So Justin Smith, Tadarius Bean, and Demetrius Haley are the 3 former Memphis police officers who are on trial, whose fate is being decided right now, and who apparently has been decided by this jury. And we will find out the verdict just as soon as it is handed up.
Definitely. Former Officer Emmett Martin III, one of the officers who pled guilty, some of his testimony that he was angry and wanted revenge after a suspect hit him with their car weeks before the incident with Tyre Nichols, and he felt that he came back too early and was angry about that as well, which is what he said was part of the reason why this whole incident happened with Tyre Nichols.
You know, one of the things I've been meditating about today, as we've known the verdict has been under deliberation since 10:15 this morning when the jury went to work, is how many lives have been impacted by this event. Obviously, Tyre Nichols lost his life. His mother and stepfather, his brothers and sisters, and his extended family, which are many.
Right, and his child.
And his child. And then his friends he was a skateboarding aficionado. He was somebody who loved photography.
Yeah, friends here in Memphis and in California where he was
right.
living originally.
Right, he was originally from California, moved here, was working for FedEx, and was on his way home for dinner when he was pulled over for reckless driving. But just in the Nichols family, there's all those people affected.
Yes.
And then these 5 officers.
And their families.
And their loved ones, and their significant others, and their children. And it's a big, long list of people. And not to mention the police department, which suffered, quite significantly.
All right. Again, the 3 officers, I think we have, we're showing pictures right now of Tyre Nichols, who is the victim in this particular case. These are the mugshots of the former officers who have been on trial. We have Justin Smith, Tadarius Bean, and Demetrius Haley. You can see their mugshots there on the screen. These 3 men have been on trial for 3.5 weeks so far. 28
That's right.
cases.
And so the allegation was that these officers and the other 2 who pleaded guilty took turns hitting, punching, assaulting Tyre Nichols after he initially ran from the scene where the initial reckless driving stop was made. And he ended up just a short distance from his mother's home, Rovon Wells, his mom, who has become a notable figure in the fight against police overreactions.
Excessive force.
Excessive force with her with her husband appearing before the Congressional Black Caucus. This is the only time they left the trial was to go to Washington to lobby for more accountability for police departments when it comes to excessive force.
It was interesting. His mother was in our newsroom not too long ago before the trial started, and very gracious woman. But she said that she was just tired. She was tired, and she was just tired. And I told her, it'll be over soon. That the trial was going to begin, and there would be a decision. It would be over soon.
Well,
at least as far as the case is concerned.
At least this case, but then there's going to be a state trial.
Case as
so
well.
This is a long-running thing. Now, the defense has put up a mighty defense. The attorneys representing the police officers have said that they're only as good officers are as their trainers. And so the man who was their trainer at the Memphis Police Academy testified, I believe, for 3 days. And so the defense tried to claim that their training was not what it should have been. And better training might have prevented this sort of thing.
And this is there's a grand scope of all of this. This federal trial came 15 months into the Department of Justice pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department.
That's right. The United States Civil Rights Division is working on the pattern of practice investigation into the MPD. And this is something that the city welcomed in the wake of this tragic event to restore its credibility, to restore the credibility of the response of police officers in these kinds of situations. And so this is the U.S. Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department has been looking into the pattern and practice of Memphis police and what happens. And
Yeah.
so there have been community conversations. There were town halls where people were invited. The invitations were made to people who feel like they've been mistreated. And they were interviewed and have been interviewed. We don't know the status of that investigation
Right.
because the Justice Department just doesn't reveal that sort of
But
thing.
the DOJ announced the investigation in July of just last year,
That's
and they're
right.
looking, as Joe said, looking into allegations of discriminatory policing, improper use of force, and unlawful searches and arrests made by MPD. And the DOJ said this investigation was not prompted by one specific incident. The same type of investigations into the Louisville and Minneapolis police departments after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd took more than 2 years to complete. So we still may have a ways to go on their investigation of the Memphis Police Department at this point in time.
That's right.
And you can add information if you have a complaint about the Memphis Police Department. You can add information to this ongoing investigation by calling this number. It's 888-473-3730, or you may email community.memphis@doj.gov, and you can find all this information on our website, actionnews5.com, as well.
So to bring you up to date, we are awaiting the announcement of the verdict. We understand there is a verdict reached in the Tyre Nichols case involving 3 of the 5 officers. 2 have pleaded guilty. 3 are now on trial, and here are those 3, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith. They've put up a vigorous defense as best they could, but they did not testify in their own defense. And so after a 3.5-week-long trial, testimony wrapped up on Monday, September 30th, and a grand total of 28 witnesses, Kim, had taken the stand during that 3.5 weeks. Now, the defense lawyers for the 3 officers called a combined 9 witnesses to testify. 2 of the 5 officers involved in Tyre's death pleaded guilty on the federal charges, and they testified in the trial as part of their plea agreement. So Edmund Martin III and Desmond Mills Jr. both said the actions of the officers were wrong and they used excessive force, and they regret very much the events of January 7th, 2023.
And as Joe mentioned, the jury began deliberating this morning at about 10:15. It's a 12-person jury, and the makeup is 4 white men, 4 black women, 3 white women, and 1 black man. And then they have 2 alternates, a black man and an Asian woman chosen as alternates, who have been listening to this case and deliberating to come up with a verdict.
That's right. And so the Scorpion team is something that has been disbanded since these events of January 2023, and the police department has been quite circumspect and very careful about how it operates, especially in these kinds of teams, and being more judicious, more prudent. And it's quite a challenge because we have a crime issue. Here's the decision that was issued on the Scorpion team, and the decision to deactivate it. And so we're looking at the timeline here. The Scorpion team was launched in 2021, and then we'll look at some of the video from those days when roll call was being held, and the team was being activated. And as you can see, the officers there were wearing masks because this dates back to 2021 and the COVID era.
Right. And interestingly enough, in January of 2024, the DOJ released a new guide on specialized units like the Scorpion unit in law enforcement agencies. Officials say the guide comes after the death of Tyre Nichols and the public scrutiny of MPD's failed Scorpion unit.
The DOJ made it a priority to develop a practical resource for law enforcement and community leaders assessing the use of specialized unit in police agencies.
And Nichols' family also filed a $550 million lawsuit against the city of Memphis, those 5 former officers, and the Memphis Police Department. That lawsuit claims Nichols' death was a direct and foreseeable product of the unconstitutional policies, practices, customs, and deliberate indifferences of the city of Memphis and its police officials.
That's right, and we know Ben Crump has been the attorney, as you can see right there on the steps of the Shelby County Courthouse. He's been representing the family of Tyre Nichols. There we see Rovon Wells.
And that case is expected to be heard sometime next year, too.
That is right. And this is a significant amount of money that they are seeking from the city of Memphis. And Crump, of course, wants this to be a landmark case so that other police departments will take heed.
Right, exactly. A special task force was created in response to crime within specific neighborhoods before the Scorpion unit was made up. And last February, Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis said after disbanding the Scorpion unit, at least 30 officers were reassigned to other specialized units.
That's right. And so the wait is on downtown at the Odell Horton Federal Building. Judge Mark Norris is overseeing the trial of the 3 former officers who are accused in the Tyre Nichols case. The verdict apparently is in. We're waiting to see just what it is. We have Jerry Askin and another one of our hardworking producers, Lydian, is down there.
We've got Bria Bolden is down there as well.
Bria Bolden is down there to collect information from anyone who has a comment afterwards. As you know, cameras are not allowed inside the federal building. There was a day when they were, but that was way earlier in my career. In the 70s, we could bring cameras in there, no longer allowed. And so we wait outside to talk with the folks involved, and they come out right there on the Front Street entrance of the Odell Horton Federal Building in downtown Memphis, looking out at the river. And we are just waiting now to find out what this jury will decide.
Exactly. Some of the, again, notable testimony from former officer Emmett Martin. He said he lied and exaggerated about Tyre Nichols and to justify his actions and of excessive force. Martin confirmed that he and Officer Demetrius Haley, who was on trial, were known as the Smash Brothers for using excessive force on suspects.
That's right, and they exacted a tax, a so-called tax, when the testimony said, yeah, when suspects tried to escape. Let's take another look at our timeline. So this all began on a weeknight, January 7th, 2023, a traffic stop for reckless driving. This stop changed the lives of many, many people. On January 10th, 2023, Tyre Nichols passed away in the ICU unit of St. Francis Hospital in East Memphis. And then the police department acted with incredible speed because they recognized what a disaster this would be for the department on so many levels. And there was so much proof.
Between body camera videos and blue light videos, there was just so much to see. One of the most moving, I guess, effective testimony during this trial was, for me anyway, that I thought was former officer Desmond Mills Jr., one of the officers who pleaded guilty, who actually got very emotional on the stand, saying that he wished that this had never happened, basically.
That's right. So January 20th, 2023, the police department fired the 5 officers. Now, Kim and I have both done a lot of journalism here at Action News 5. We've never seen the police department moved this quickly.
Exactly.
So literally within 13 days of the event, the officers were fired, and then the DA went to state court, went to a grand jury, and the indictments were handed up on January 26, 2023. And then we saw the next day the video, which included blue light cameras, street light cameras that show wide shots of the scene, and then body cam
cameras,
from the police department. Now, some of the police officers did not have their cameras on. Some of them did not have their camera activated, but there was enough evidence there, and so this jury has watched hours of this, 3.5 weeks of this trial, and then the prosecution has been presenting one video after another of this tragic event.
Yeah. More of the timeline. September 12th of 2023, the 5 former officers, as Joe said, indicted on federal charges. November 2nd, 2023, Desmond Mills changed his federal plea. In August of 2023, Emmett Martin III changes his federal plea as well. And September 9th of 2023.
2024.
2020,
Actually,
actually 2024, yes,
yeah.
It should. August of 2024. And
Right.
September of 2024, the federal trial began.
That's right. And so it's gone 3.5 weeks. It ended Monday, September 30th. And we are going to know the outcome probably within the hour. You know, it takes a little while to gather everyone in these kind of events. So you have to have all the legal teams summoned. So they need to move from wherever they are downtown up into the courtroom. And then obviously the defendants need to be there. And,
Right.
you know, all of us in the media are significantly interested representing our viewers, the
Right.
general public. And so one would think we're getting pretty close to the time.
Something I would like to mention too, we've been talking about the camera video and different things that former officers Mills and said, but also there were 2 former MPD officers, supervisors, who described Officer Justin Smith, one of the officers on trial, as a good officer, a good man. They said he was an officer who was ethical and professional. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things for the jury to think about today as they deliberated this.
All right, let's see what we're
Got some
being
new
handed
information.
right here. What is that? Is that the whole rundown? Okay, that's basically what we have.
Yeah.
That's basically what we have right here. Okay, so we've been preparing for this moment for at least the last 3.5 weeks. And so we're keenly interested in finding out what this jury has decided. You know, you'd have to think they have been through quite an ordeal here, but they just got this verdict. I mean, they just got this case at 10:15 this morning. So, you know, that's what, 5 hours or so?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not super long that they've taken.
It wasn't a long deliberation,
That's
period
right.
of deliberation. We're going to step down for a moment and start our 5 o'clock newscast.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, we just want to say it's 5 o'clock.
It is.
And it's just about 5 o'clock. In about 29 seconds it will be. And we are on a special broadcast of Action News 5 here today as the jury in the trial of the 3 officers who are accused in the death of Tyre Nichols has come back. The jury has come back and announced it has reached a verdict. We don't know what that verdict is. But here at the 5 o'clock hour, we expect sometime in this next hour, we will find out what the jury's decided.
Yeah, our Jerry Askin has been in the courtroom from the start, from jury selection to now, and he will be coming out with a live report from the courtroom. And then we have other journalists of our team that are also there. Right. Bria Bolden outside the courtroom now, waiting to get reaction from family and friends and attorneys as they leave as well.
That's right. And so many people want to know, you know, what the final verdict is going to be here and what the final decisions are going to be made about this case. And it will be interesting to see what Judge Norris decides on many different levels.
Okay.
We can talk about how this jury is made up. Kim,
yeah.
You want to talk about that?
We have 12 members, of course, of the jury, 12-person jury now deliberating, or finished deliberating now. 4 white women, 4 black women, 3, I think that's supposed to be 4 white men, 4 black women, 3 white women, and 1 black man. Alternates are a black man and an Asian woman.
That's right. And so these folks have been deliberating since 10:15 this morning. A grand total of 14 people listened to the trial. There were some alternates. 2 alternates were dismissed, one for a medical reason, one for another reason. We don't know why that person was dismissed. It's unclear who the alternates are. And this was the makeup of the jury. This was the group of our peers, our citizens, who are deciding this case, who've done their civic duty We've had a courtroom artist creating these images in the courtroom since the first day of the trial to give you a sense of what it's like in there, since we're not allowed to have cameras inside the federal courtroom. And that's, I think, a depiction of some of the video that the jurors watched.
Okay, I guess the verdict is coming down now. We're waiting for word. Just heard that the verdict is being delivered now. Is that correct? Demetrius Haley, count 1. Not guilty of the first charge, deprivation of rights under color of the law, excessive force, and failure to intervene. Not guilty for Demetrius Haley.
Guilty of another charge involving bodily injury. So that would be Demetrius Haley, guilty of a charge involving bodily injury.
Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, deliberate indifference, not guilty.
So this is Demetrius Haley.
Mm-hmm. Lesser involving bodily injury, guilty.
All right.
Okay. Here we have it right here.
All right.
Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, guilty. Count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. So, Demetrius Haley, not guilty of the first count, deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty of the lesser involving bodily injury. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, guilty. And count 3, guilty of conspiracy to witness tampering, guilty of obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Here's the charges for Justin Smith.
All right, Justin Smith, count 1, deprivation of rights under color of the law, excessive force and failure to intervene, not guilty for Justin Smith. Count 2, deprivation of rights under the color of law, deliberate indifference, not guilty for Justin Smith. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty for Justin Smith. Conspiracy to witness tamper, not guilty for Justin Smith. But on count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty on that charge.
And now for Tadarius Bean. Count 1, deprivation of rights under color of the law, excessive force and failure to intervene, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, deliberate indifference, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, not guilty. Count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. That is for Tadarius Bean, guilty on only one charge, obstruction of justice and witness tampering. Again, Demetrius Haley, guilty of bodily injury, guilty of also bodily injury, and guilty of witness tampering.
Yeah, let's take a look. This is Demetrius Haley, count 1, excessive force and failure to intervene. And on that count, he was found not guilty. Count 2, deliberate indifference, Demetrius Haley, he was found guilty of lesser involvement of bodily injury. Count 2, deliberate indifference, deprivation of rights under color of law, deliberate indifference, not guilty. But the lesser involving bodily injury, he was found guilty of that.
Yeah, Justin Smith was found guilty only on count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. While
Right. There we see Justin Smith's image, and he was just found on that one count.
Yes, guilty of obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Tadarius Bean, same thing, guilty of obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Not guilty on all other charges.
This is somewhat remarkable, don't you think?
I think so.
I mean, given the video, given all the evidence, given the testimony of the other officers,
Yeah.
Jerry Askin, who was in the courtroom when this verdict came down, is outside for us now. And Jerry, give us a report.
Hey, Joe, Kim, good evening. Good evening. Yes, I just walked out the federal building literally about 2 minutes ago. I can tell you inside the courtroom, there really wasn't a lot of emotion from what I could see. Tyre's mom walked inside the courtroom and really just kind of held her head down as the verdict was being read. Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, those officers really showed no emotion as the verdict was read. You all mentioned the verdict a few minutes ago, but as you can recall, perhaps Tadarius Bean and Justin Smith, the jurors found them not guilty on most charges because they were the ones seen on video more so holding Tyre Nichols down and not seeing with that fatal kick and those punches like the other officers were seeing in that baton. So any minute now we can expect for the family of Tyre Nichols to walk out of the federal court building here. We hope to hear from them any minute now. The officers will also walk out and because they will be sentenced at a later date. The judge could choose to hold them, but they could be sentenced at a later date. But this all happening literally after 19 days of this federal trial, 28 witnesses. The prosecution called 19 witnesses, the defense called 9. No officer in this trial testified in their own defense. And if you can recall, as you may have mentioned, Emmett Martin III and Desmond Mills Jr., those officers who pled guilty in this case, they did actually testify against the other officers, saying that excessive force was used. As a matter of fact, Desmond Mills, one officer, he testified saying that he lied about what happened in the whole assault because he wanted to keep his job. He lied about it because he said he had a special needs child and he wanted the insurance. Yeah, Emmett Martin III, actually the officer Emmett Martin III, he said he wanted revenge. He said he was angry. So many officers on that Scorpion team testified in this case. So right now we're monitoring to see who may come out. But again, Tadarius Bean, Justin Smith, and Demetrius Haley, that verdict came down literally in the past 10 minutes or so. Now, the jury began deliberations around 10:15 this morning. Around 4:20 or so, we got the word that they reached a verdict. Prosecutors the whole time made the point that the juror, that Tyre Nichols was beaten by all 5 officers and that they lied about it to cover it up. And this whole time, Tyre Nichols never posed a threat. The defense, however, they claim that it wasn't clear if Tyre was armed after he ran away from that initial traffic stop. This happening back on January 7th of 2023. We also know that Tyre died from blunt force trauma to his head. The medical examiner said his cause of death was a homicide. So right now, any minute now, I can also tell you Attorney Benjamin Crump is inside the courtroom right now with the family of Tyre Nichols. Also, for the past few days, we've seen more supporters show up here. Representative Justin J. Pearson was also here praying with the family. We've seen G.A. Hardaway here also praying with the family. Pastor Earl Fisher, many pastors here hoping for justice. I did see a few of the supporters inside the courtroom kind of hold their head down when those not guilty verdicts came down for Tadarius Bean and for Justin Smith. You can imagine upset. Perhaps they all wanted a guilty verdict. So I'm just kind of watching to see who comes out the court building here, because we definitely want to get that reaction and sound when those officers come out and when the family of Tyre Nichols come out as well. It's also worth to mention that Tyre's mom has been here every day at this trial. We're talking 19 days in this trial. The only day that she wasn't here. Okay, go ahead, Justin. Go ahead, Joe.
Excuse me, Jerry, we're just curious. Have you heard anything? I know that Desmond Mills and Emmett Martin III, the 2 officers who pleaded, the 2 former officers who pleaded guilty, they still have to be sentenced as well, right?
Correct. And we are still waiting to find out when that date could be. We're also waiting to see when Tadarius Bean, Justin Smith, and Demetrius Haley could be sentenced also. So we're just kind of waiting and watching to see when this all could happen. Typically, even after they're found guilty, perhaps, and convicted, it could take up to 90 days before they're actually sentenced. So it's not clear if for sure they will be in holding today or if these 3 officers will get to go home and then come back at a later date for sentencing.
Jerry, after you heard all the testimony and saw all the video and heard the case from start to finish, and then heard the defense, which must have been quite vigorous to get the verdict that we're getting today, what is your reaction to the verdicts?
You know, I have to say, hearing that Tadarius Bean and Justin Smith actually got that not guilty verdict, on most of those charges, I don't want to say that I'm so much surprised, but I will say that they were the ones seen on video holding Tyre down. They did throw a few punches, according to the FBI and statements that were in the court, but it was perhaps Demetrius Haley seen on video kicking Tyre, who sent those pictures, witnesses say, to friends and people of that bloody Tyre Nichols. So I am in no way personally, as a journalist here who covered this trial, surprised to hear of Demetrius Haley's guilty verdict on all counts. Justin Smith and Tadarius Bean, what happened, let's all admit it wasn't right. But Justin Smith and Tadarius Bean, I'm not as surprised to hear that most of their charges came back not guilty. And I want to also mention this too. The attorney for Justin Smith, Martin Zumach, and the attorney for the other officer, Tadarius Bean, they brought in a lot of character witnesses who really painted a picture of them being good officers, good friends, and perhaps that helped paint the picture for the jury as real people. Justin Smith, they mentioned, was a father. They mentioned Tadarius Bean. Someone came in and said that he was a good man. He was by the book, how he had an actual police vehicle, but he took it home. But he wouldn't drive that vehicle to McDonald's or to Walmart because he was just a by-the-book type of guy, and he never was the kind of guy that would do anything wrong. So I'm not surprised to hear Tadarius Bean and Justin Smith getting those lower charges.
All right. So I guess that my question is, who showed up in the videos the most? Was it the two officers who pleaded guilty? Or who showed up the most being violent, do you think? Was it the two officers who pleaded guilty and testified against the other three?
Most definitely. Emmett Martin III and Desmond Mills were the most in that video. Emmett Martin III was seen in that video punching Tyre, kicking Tyre multiple times. Desmond Mills used his baton on Tyre, and Justin Smith's attorney actually made the point several times that Desmond Mills was the only officer with a free hand at the time. They claimed Justin Smith and Demetrius Haley were all trying to hold him down and things like that, but it was Desmond Mills who had a free hand to try to handcuff Tyre Nichols. Third was Demetrius Haley. He was the one seen in that video kicking Tyre, as well. So I would have to take him, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, and Desmond Mills. As we know, Desmond Mills was the first officer to plead guilty on those federal charges. And then you've got Emmett Martin III, who pled guilty weeks before this trial started.
All right.
Okay. Jerry, we're hearing that all three officers are being taken into custody by federal officers.
That's right, and we understand that the sentencing will come in January 22nd, 2025. So that is going to be literally 2 years after Tyre's death. The sentencing will be decided by Judge Mark Norris, and a whole lot of effort is going to be put into that decision.
What would be the possible sentences these officers would face, Jerry? Do you know?
Well, they could face up to life in prison. Now, we're still working to get a breakdown of how all these charges play out. This is all live and breaking right now. But we do know, at least for Demetrius Haley, this could be life in prison. With it being a lesser included charge on some of these counts and whatnot, we would have to kind of break it all down. But I know when this whole thing first started, they could get life in prison. And don't forget, there's also a state trial that could happen as well. All 5 officers charged with second-degree murder on the state level. So we're, waiting and watching to see a date when that could happen, and we're seeing if that time will be served consecutively. So this is all breaking right now. We don't have a set timeline on how much time will be served and all that for each officer, but that's a question we're going to definitely keep asking.
We probably should go over these the verdict again. I'm sorry.
Go out.
I'm sorry. What were you saying, Jerry? My apologies.
I'm just turning around to see when. Yep,
Okay.
turning around to see when Tyre's mom and his family might come out. Also, Benjamin Crump is here. Representative Justin J. Pearson is here. Newly elected General Sessions Court Clerk Tammy Sawyer is also here, a lot of officials here. And as far as the charges, one more time, I'm going to go over it and you can double check me to make sure we're all right here. Tadarius Bean, not guilty on excessive force and duty to intervene, not guilty on failure to render aid, not guilty on conspiracy, but he was found guilty, Tadarius Bean, on obstruction. The same for Justin Smith, not guilty on failure to intervene, not guilty on excessive force, not guilty on conspiracy, but guilty on obstruction. Now, Demetrius Haley, who was seen in that video kicking Tyre and sending that picture of the bloody Tyre to several people, according to witnesses who testified, he was found guilty on all counts. A lesser included charge for excessive force and duty to intervene, and also a lesser included charge for that failure to render aid for bodily injury, but guilty on conspiracy and guilty on obstruction.
That's quite a list.
Oh yeah.
So the report just came to us that all three defendants are being taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals right now, and that the judge will discuss a motion for their release on Monday. So Judge Norris will be back in his courtroom on Monday, and we'll hear arguments on whether or not these men should be released. And they're going to be sentenced on January 22nd next year. So that's the very latest.
Right. I wonder if that will include the two former officers who pleaded guilty as well.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Yeah,
that remains
that's a great question as well. Yeah, I also want to go ahead, Joe.
No, you go ahead.
I don't want to talk over you. I also want to mention that, I spoke with Tyre's parents exclusively before this trial started. I asked her what was her hope for this trial and for those 5 officers, and she told me that she wanted those 5 officers to go to hell. But they're going to jail, turns out. We're trying to figure out what their sentence will be, but that's what Tyre's mom told me. Every day of the trial, she would speak to me, and I would ask her how she was doing, and it's been a tough time. Now, the family liaison is about to walk out of the courthouse. He may or may not speak. I'm waiting to see if Tyre's family will speak. But the family liaison, who's normally with Tyre's family, is walking out. I'm just going to give it a minute here, but if you have any questions, Joe or Kim, please feel free to go ahead and ask. But Tyre's mom has been here every day. The only day that she wasn't here was when she was in Washington, D.C. for the Congressional Black Caucus, when she wanted to keep Tyre's legacy alive. That was the first Friday of this trial. Again, this trial lasted 4 weeks, 19 days to be exact.
And I should note that this story keeps getting national and international coverage. When this story happened back in January of 2023, it was global news. It was the lead story that night on the BBC. That's something I pay attention to because I listen to find out what the world news is, what's happening around the world, and it took me aback to hear a Memphis story was the lead story across the world on the BBC. And so we see the family and attorneys coming out.
Justice for Tyre! Justice for Tyre! Justice for Tyre! Justice for Tyre!
My reaction is that all
Wait, hold up.
All of them have been convicted of something, and they're all going to jail. That's how I feel. This has been a long journey for our family. I'm actually in shock right now because I still can't believe all this stuff is going on. But we're happy that they all have been convicted and they have been arrested.
And that's very important that the jury found all of them in some way participated in a crime and that Tyre Nichols' death won't go unaccounted for. That is critical. We know that this is the federal case. It's different from the state case, but in the federal court, all 5 of them, 2 pled guilty, 3 of them have been found guilty of charges, and they all, as the judge articulated, have been taken into custody. So the family was very relieved that the killers of Tyre Nichols have been taken into custody and have been found guilty. Now you will hear from Attorney Tony Romanucci before any of the other family members may speak.
Thank you, everybody. Today was monumentous because you had two defendants who pled guilty to deprivation of rights under color of law. They testified in this courtroom. The remaining defendants have all been found guilty of one charge or more: obstruction, conspiracy, deprivation of rights causing bodily injury. This is justice for Tyre. This is a very high burden that this government had in order to prove 12 counts against all of these individuals.
That's right.
And they proved more than half of them.
That's right.
So we are grateful to the federal government. We're grateful to the jury for paying attention, His Honor for a clean trial, and now we look forward to justice. We look forward to the state case, the civil case, because what we know is these officers conspired.
That's right.
They made an agreement.
That's right.
They made an agreement to cause harm, and now they are in jail.
Amen.
Amen.
You're gonna hear from Mr. Wells in just a minute. It's very important that we thank Christian Clark and the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice for bringing these charges and zealously prosecuting this case. Now you will hear from Mr. Rodney Wells, the father of Tyre Nichols.
I just want to say for the family that we are all elated. We're all very, very happy that these guys have been put in jail. This is a long time coming.
Yes.
And justice for Tyre. So we're just so very proud that all of them are going to jail today.
Yes.
We cannot wait on the sentencing, so we know what their total time will be. But today was a very good day for our family.
Yes.
And now you will hear from Judge Ernestine Doris, who will make a statement for you hear from his uncle.
Today is a day that we in fact got justice for Tyre, and I just like to thank the government for their work in getting this done and their diligence and the way that this matter was held and handled before the court, so that we know that notwithstanding anything that we think, there is justice.
Yes.
Yes.
It is very important to note that all of them were pointing the fingers at each other. So all of them said that the others had something to do with the death of Tyre Nichols. That is very important, especially as we go forward to the other cases, whether it be the state criminal charge, but especially the civil case, the wrongful death civil rights violation, because the violation of Tyre Nichols' civil rights led to his death. And the blood is on the hand of the Memphis Police Department.
That's right.
And we're thankful to the jury for this first step of justice. Now you will hear from his Uncle Johnny.
First and foremost, I'd just like to thank you all for being here for our family. I thank the federal government. They really worked very hard for Tyre. And I'd like to thank God for watching over us and for our families. And you know, like they said, they're all in prison. They're not getting out anytime soon, and it's not over. I'd just like to say, you know, let this be a message to all officers, you know, that, you know, you will reap what you sow.
That's right.
You know, I mean, you just can't go around hurting people and think that you're not going to be accountable for it. So let this be a message, because Tyre's death did not go in vain. And that's all I like to
Now
say.
you hear from his sister, Kiwana. Kiana, I'm sorry. Kiana, you want
I just want to say, I don't know if I'm happy, but it's a bittersweet day. I will never get my little brother back, but to see those officers held accountable for what they did and put our family through did give us some hope for the future, and maybe this won't ever happen to another family in the future. But I just so thankful. I was smiling when I saw them get taken away into custody, because that's part of the, that's just one of the things that they did with him. What they did to my brother was wrong, and to see them go into custody and be held accountable was anything and everything that my family could ask for.
Justice for Tyre Nichols.
Justice for Tyre Nichols.
We'd like to thank all the activists, all the state representatives, everybody, all the faith-based community, everybody who stood for justice, to say that Tyre deserved humanity, Tyre deserved his constitutional rights, and Tyre deserved to get home to his mother and father. Ms. Rovine, would you like to say the last word?
I just want to say to all of you guys, thank you so much for covering the story the correct way. And I appreciate the love and everything that you guys have given our family. And to the community of Memphis, thank you for all the prayers and all the love. Just thank you so much. We appreciate it all.
Anything else, Corrine? Anything else, family? Nope. Justice for Tyre Nichols. 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 Justice for Tyre Nichols.
Demetrius Haley seemed to have the harshest sentence. Do you think that was fair?
Well, I think the jury evaluated all the evidence and they made the decisions based on their deliberations of who should be punished most severely. We know that Martin and Haley and those all pointed the fingers at each other. And not only they're going to have to answer to the judge when he sentences them, most importantly, they're going to have to answer to God.
That's right.
Right. Attorney Crump, you all wanted a guilty verdict on all counts. Correct?
We got, and that's what I was sitting there holding hands with Mr. Wells and Miss Wells, and when they heard a guilty conviction for each one of them, they thanked God right there as they were sitting in the courtroom. But then, when the judge said, U.S. Marshals, take them all into custody, Mr. Wells said, thank God, all of them going to jail for what they did to my boy.
Thank you.
Justice for Tyre. 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 Justice for Tyre.
Josh, can you get them walking up after doing the head?
Okay, so we're back live now. If you all can hear us, we are watching live video now of Tyre's family marching or walking down Front Street here outside the federal building. They're calling for justice after the family held a press conference after hearing about those guilty verdicts. Attorney Benjamin Crump was with them. They said in so many words that while they wanted a guilty verdict on all counts, they are happy to know that the officers on trial are going to jail today. Of course, we'll learn their sentence soon, but the family is satisfied, they said. The family is satisfied that these officers are going to jail today. Let's get some more video, Adam, of these officers, the family of Tyre Nichols crossing the street here. But again, we are watching right now as the family of Tyre Nichols are crossing the street here on Front Street and Poplar Avenue, out across from the federal building, as they are about to head home or wherever after hearing about at least one guilty charge for every officer on trial. Again, we know Officer Justin Smith and Tadarius Bean found guilty on obstruction charges. Demetrius Haley found guilty on all counts. The mother of Tyre Nichols said it was tough to hear about this sentence. Let's actually cross the street if you don't mind, Adam. Can we cross the street? Make sure we're not missing anything. But the family of Tyre Nichols, they have been here every single day. I want to make sure we're here with them to make sure we're not missing anything as far as reaction. This has been 19 days as Tyre's mother has waited for justice, she says. Let's go over here. How you doing, Frank? Okay, so Tyre's family is about to head home now in their vehicle. Mr. Rodney, how you feeling?
I'm all right.
Okay. What was your reaction when you heard, this is Tyre's stepfather, what was your reaction when you heard about that verdict?
We're elated. Yes, it's long awaited.
Where do you go from here?
State trial and civil trial.
Yeah, but you personally, as his stepfather, where do you go from here?
We got to keep pushing. You know what I'm saying? We got to keep fighting. There's other families that need help in this fight. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be activists for other families.
I know Tyre was about to turn 30 years old. I know you miss him. But you also you mentioned police accountability. Talk about that more.
Well, that's just normal. I mean, you know, that's expected. You know, police need to be accountable for whatever they do. Like we said, it's not all bad cops, so we got to rule out the bad ones. You know, so.
I Gotcha. Well, obviously, Tyre's family, they're still taking this all in. They're still trying to process this verdict that just came in. So we'll give them a minute to process it all. But they've been surrounded by supporters for these past 19 days. And really, since this happened back on January 7th of 2023, they're about to get in their vehicle and head off from the federal court building here after hearing about that guilty verdict.
Right. Thank you very much. Jerry Askin with live coverage as the Tyre Nichols family had their reaction and articulated what they wanted to say. Relief.
Yeah, it's encouraging to hear them that they are happy with the results of the trial, because this is what it was really all about, was justice. As they said, justice for Tyre Nichols in this instance, who lost his life in a traffic stop with Memphis police.
That's right. Well, we're coming up on NBC Nightly News. Actually, we are in NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt right now. So are we going to stay on the air, or
Okay.
We're going to stay right here because this is a national story.
It truly is.
With the verdict today. And let's just go through the verdict again if we can. So we know two of the officers pleaded guilty before the trial began.
That was Desmond Mills Jr. and Emmett Martin III.
And they testified in the trial and were emotional and regretted and articulated that, testified that they were very sorry for what happened. In 2020 hindsight, clearly.
Definitely.
But the three officers, the former officers who were convicted today, Demetrius Haley, Justin Smith, and Tadarius Bean, are all now in custody
of the U.S. Marshals.
Of the U.S. Marshals. And what was that?
We're going to recap the verdicts again. Demetrius Haley, deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury, guilty. Deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury, guilty. Conspiracy to witness tamper, guilty. Obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty.
And in Demetrius Haley's case, he was found not guilty of one charge, the deprivation of rights under color of law, deliberate indifference. He was found not guilty on that.
Justin Smith next.
All right, Justin Smith, there you see his image.
Justin Smith was found not guilty of all of those charges except for count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. We understand Bill Crump is talking again. I guess not. We thought he was. But anyway, Justin Smith, guilty on count 4 only, obstruction of justice, witness tampering.
And then Tadarius Bean. Oh, let's go back to Ben Crump now, who is representing the family of Tyre
Them
Nichols.
to have any favoritism just because they had a gun and a badge. That's what the community demands when we say equal justice under the law. There should be no difference when they go to punish those officers for killing Tyre Nichols as if the reverse would have happened. If Tyre Nichols would have killed those officers, what sentence would he have gotten? Well, that's what the family expects. That's what the community expects. Thank you.
Welcome. And you got it.
Again, that was Ben Crump representing the family of Tyre Nichols in this case.
And so he has filed a civil suit with Antonio Romanucci, who is partner.
For the family.
And that's $550 million, more than $500 million that they're suing the city of Memphis and the police department for as a wrongful death case.
Yes.
And so.
And there's still the state trial to come as well.
That's what's next, the state trial. But let's go back to the verdict. I don't think we fully articulated the Justin Smith. He really had, in terms of
character
verdicts.
Witnesses. He had good character witnesses for himself.
Indeed, he did. And so he was found not guilty of all the charges except obstruction of justice, witness tampering. We're going to go to an activist now who's downtown with Jerry Askin. Let's listen in.
Bria Bolden is out there now talking to people, getting reactions.
Yeah, guys, I'm here outside. Jerry's with another crew down the way, but I wanted to give you guys a perspective. Obviously, activists have been with Tyre Nichols' family since day one when this tragedy happened a year ago now. I want to bring in Paula. This is Paula. She's been speaking with the family since the beginning. Paula, can you talk about, I guess, how you're feeling today with this verdict, guilty verdicts?
Yes, I am so elated for once, out of all the cases that we've been fighting in and around Memphis, that we have a happy family. If mama and daddy and sisters and brothers and attorneys are happy, then the activists are happy. Whatever the family desires, that is what we have been fighting for. We have been nonviolent. We haven't broken so much as one window. We've abided by all of Memphis laws and city ordinances, and we just want justice.
And I know you've been live streaming. I mean, this whole time you've been down here every single day for the trial, even before then with the protest as well last year. Can you talk about how it's been just being here supporting the family and why you decided to do that?
I, of course, have had my beef with Memphis Police Department way before Tyre. We've had other cases that we have been fighting with families for, and it just seems like we weren't heard. So we had to pull some strings, and we all had to band together as a community to fight for justice because we seen the videos. There's other people that haven't seen them, but I seen them. I saw Tyre Nichols needing help and no one there to help him. This is just justice heaven to me. If I can see Mama smile about the verdict, you're going to see activists smile. You're going to see a peaceful community. You're going to see camaraderie between one another. You're going to not see me saying blah, 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 12. You're going to see me happy because we finally got justice. And this is not just Memphis. I have been live streaming Tyre Nichols all around the country and the world, Africa, London. People are watching Memphis, and we are sure to hold these officers accountable for their actions, from the Scorpion Unit on down. And I would love to hear from C.J. Davis and the mayor. Well, the mayor is at Makita's Cookies.
We've got the state case next. We're expecting it sometime next year. Are you guys planning to be there outside and supporting this family still?
As long as God gives me breath and I am in Memphis and I am not working, I will be there to support justice for Tyre Nichols because he should still be alive today.
You've been out here all day.
All day.
Just tell me just about how this moment how long you've been waiting for this moment.
Well, from the moment that I got the inbox on Facebook that the police have killed another black man, I've been waiting for justice. Not only Tyre, but there are others that we are fighting for. Just the power of social media to get the word out from different cities, not just Memphis. We orchestrated for George Floyd and other cities. We are working in solidarity with others. So the world is watching Memphis, and I am determined to let them know when MPD steps out of line. You can guarantee to hear my name, hear my voice, because we are held accountable as citizens. They should be held accountable as officers for their actions. They are to protect and serve us. They work for us. And we need the community to feel safe. The community does not feel safe enough to call 911. You don't know what's going to happen. So it's justice for me. It's justice for me. If Mama is happy, then the activists are happy. So we've abided by her rules and her regulations. We did not do another Ferguson because that is where I am from. Tyre should be alive today. There is some anger still deep down inside of me because Tyre should be alive today. And so, as I said, if the family's happy, then the activists are happy.
Paula, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your coverage of this and being there on everybody's beck and call for justice for Tyre. Thank you.
We never got
Joe and Kim, I'm going to send it back to you guys in the studio.
Bria Bolden, thank you. Please investigate and talk with more of the observers who are there. Please interview some more of the good folks who are there who witnessed that verdict in court today.
But speaking of the verdicts, maybe we should start over again. We've been trying to get this starting with from the beginning. Demetrius Haley, deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury. He was guilty, found guilty. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, guilty. Count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty.
All right, and our next defendant would be Justin Smith here, deprivation of rights under the color of law, and he was found not guilty on that charge, and also found not guilty, frankly, on all the other charges, but guilty of obstruction of justice. That's where he was witness tampering. He was found guilty. Justin Smith was on that charge.
And Tadarius Bean, the same thing for Tadarius Bean, found not guilty on all the charges except count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. Of course, the other 2 former officers who testified, Desmond Mills Jr. and Emmett Martin III, were probably most prominent in the video of the kicking and the hitting that was spotted, but they pleaded guilty, one last year and one not too long ago this year, pleaded guilty to the federal charges. Of course, the state case is still to come, and the civil trial as well.
That's right. So Steve Mulroy, the District Attorney General for Memphis and Shelby County, will be pressing those charges. The indictment came down the same month as the events of January 7th, 2023. And so the federal trial was given precedence. And now that that's over with, the state trial can proceed.
Okay. We're going to go back to Jerry Askin, who has been in this trial in the courtroom every day since the beginning. He's outside the courthouse now. Jerry, what's the latest?
Hey, Kim, Joe, right now we're waiting for the attorneys for the prosecution and the defense lawyers to walk out of these doors and see if they have any reaction. I want to mention their names. The prosecutors, definitely one that stood out was Catherine Gilbert as the federal prosecutor. For the defense, Officer Justin Smith, his attorney was Martin Zumach. The attorney for Tadarius Bean, John Keith Perry, among others, and the attorney for Demetrius Haley, Michael Stingle, and Leffler. So again, at any minute now, of course, we want to get all sides here. We're waiting to see what their attorneys may have to say when they walk out. Again, as you mentioned, the officers were seen handcuffed and taken into custody, but we do still want to see what the prosecution may have to say in this case. Many of them with the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, were from D.C., but trying this case here out of Memphis. So we're on standby. We heard from the family, but we're also waiting to hear from the attorneys who worked tirelessly to put this witness testimony and all this trial together for 19 days. Each of the attorneys gave an hours-long closing argument. I tell you, the attorney for Justin Smith, his argument went more than an hour and a half.
All right. Thank you, Jerry.
Sorry, we just have someone talking in our ear. Also, I just want to mention, too, that only 2 of them. Oh, we're going
Bria
back
Bolden.
to Bria Bolden, who's talking to people who are in the courtroom. Bria?
A reigning authority and can do whatever they want whenever they pull someone over.
Hunter, same to you. Guilty verdict today. You guys have been behind Tyre Nichols' family from the beginning. How are you feeling?
I mean, I feel like that was insufficient, and hearing those not guilty charges hurts. I know that the family was happy that all the officers were taken into custody and found guilty on some of them. I'm glad that there's a state and civil case still ongoing, because I don't feel good about that verdict.
Thank you for speaking with us, guys. We appreciate it. So, guys, that was Hunter Dempster and Amber Sherman. They are some of the community activists, more of them who were behind Tyre Nichols' family. You heard from one community activist just a few minutes ago, Paula Burris, who said that, if the family was happy, she was happy. Amber and Hunter, on the other hand, have a mixed reaction to that. As we know, some of the officers, or if all of them, some of them were found guilty on the original charges put forward by the U.S. Department of Justice, but some of them were found guilty on lesser count. So mixed reactions about this verdict today. Obviously, the family of Tyre Nichols told us they were happy. We know the former officers are now headed to jail at the moment, but we have mixed reactions from community activists. So we're going to keep talking about this case, obviously. We have the state case coming up and next year, and we're going to try to get more reaction from the community while we're outside the federal courthouse, while we're in downtown Memphis. Joe and Kim, I'm sending it back to you in the studio for now.
All right. All right, Bria, thank you. And again, maybe we should go through the timeline again, just to remind everyone how this all started. It started January 7th, 2023, when Tyre Nichols was pulled over for a traffic stop and accused of reckless driving.
That's right, and then Tyre passed away on January 10th, 3 days after he was assaulted, and then on...
Died from blunt force trauma to the head.
As ruled by the medical examiner. So it was a homicide, as the medical examiner ruled.
Then January 20th, 2023, the Memphis Police Department fired 5 officers accused of beating Tyre Nichols.
That's right. And then the former officers were indicted in state court, and those indictments are pending. That is the next legal event that we expect will transpire. And I suppose...
And this is a second-degree murder charge in this one.
That's right. And it's going to be interesting to see the exact timing of when this trial will actually begin, because we know the sentencing is going to happen on January 22nd, 2025.
For the federal trial, yeah.
For the case decided today. But it's hardly over.
Right. Then January 27th of 2023, the city of Memphis released video of the incident, and most of the news stations aired the video as well, describing what was being seen and allowing viewers to see some of the video that came from that incident, from police body camera video and blue light cameras set up throughout the city as well.
That's right, and that was difficult video to watch. So September 12th, 2023, a former officer indicted on federal charges. The 5 former officers were indicted. And November 2nd, Desmond Mills changed his federal plea. He took a plea deal, and we don't know what the exact outcome of that is going to be. I think the federal judge has yet to decide all that. And then just this year, in August of this year, Emmett Martin III changed his federal plea to guilty and has cooperated. And both Mills and Martin testified in this trial that ended this afternoon. Yeah. And so the trial
then, of course, the trial started September 9th of 2020 of this year.
That's right.
And ended just today.
That's right.
With the guilty verdicts.
That's right. And so this case has changed the lives of so many people, and is going to continue to do that as it unfolds, and it affects possibly the taxpayers of our city.
Exactly.
In a very significant way, depending on what the decision is made on the federal court in terms of the civil case.
Right.
And so all of us have an interest in what happens next.
But fortunately, his mother said that she was happy. Tyre Nichols' mother said that she was happy with the verdict, that they were all convicted and they were all taken into custody. His stepfather mentioned that he was ecstatic.
That's right. And so they have become fighters for justice in all kinds of other similar cases. For example, Breonna Taylor out of Louisville, Kentucky. The Tyre Nichols family has become a standard bearer for these kinds of cases across America.
Right. Well, as we said, this trial comes about 15 months into the Department of Justice pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department. The DOJ announced that investigation in July of last year, several months, it's about 6 months after the Tyre Nichols case, but they said they would look into allegations of discriminatory policing, improper use of force, and unlawful searches and arrests made by the Memphis Police Department. The DOJ said this investigation was not prompted by one specific incident. The same type of investigations into the Louisville and Minneapolis police departments after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd took more than 2 years to complete. And you are invited to add any information that you would like to add in this investigation, this ongoing investigation. Again, the number to call, 888-473-3730, or email community.memphis@doj.gov.
All right, in January 2024, the DOJ released that new guide on specialized units in law enforcement agencies as a result of this case. Officials saying the guide comes after the death of Tyre Nichols and the public scrutiny of the MPD's failed Scorpion unit. the DOJ made a priority to develop a practical resource for law enforcement and community leaders assessing the use of specialized unit in police agencies.
Yeah. And Nichols' family also filed a $550 million lawsuit against the city of Memphis, those 5 former officers, as well as the Memphis Police Department. That lawsuit claims Nichols' death was a direct and foreseeable product of the unconstitutional policies, practices, customs, and deliberate indifferences of the city of Memphis and its police officials. That case is expected to be heard sometime next year.
That's right. Now, the former officers were part of the MPD's now defunct Scorpion unit. The specialized task force was created in a response to crime within specific neighborhoods. And last February, the interim police chief, C.J. Davis, said after disbanding the Scorpion unit, at least 30 officers were reassigned to other specialized units in the police department.
And the Scorpion team stood for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. The officers on trial were part of the Scorpion Team 1, and their job was to look for drugs, illegal guns, and violent offenders.
That's right. And so Tyre Nichols, who was pulled over on January 7th, 2023, while he was trying to go home to have some dinner at his home, and ran away from the officers after the initial stop, and the chase began, and he was ultimately cordoned and beaten. And as the video shows, and as the jury saw, beaten relentlessly and suffered injuries that ultimately took his life.
3 days later.
3 days later, and this jury made its decision based on what they saw, one would think, from the testimony, and what they heard in the testimony, and what they saw in that video.
Okay, I would like to just go through the charges again one more time, because it's an interesting breakdown. Demetrius Haley was the one that received most of the guilty verdicts today. He was guilty on count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury, guilty. He could have been guilty of excessive force and failure to intervene, but he was found not guilty. That was the only charge he was found not guilty. Well, not the only one, but count 2, deprivation of rights under color of law, bodily injury, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, guilty. And count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. That is Demetrius Haley.
All right, and moving over to Justin Smith now. He was found not guilty on all the charges with the exception of obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. And so that is the one charge that he was found guilty of in the Tyre Nichols case.
And the same case for Tadarius Bean, who also had officers testifying that he was a good man and a good officer in the trial. He was found guilty of only count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. So there you go. All 4 officers found guilty in some capacity in this case today. All 3 former officers.
That's right.
And the 2 other officers already pleaded guilty to the federal charges. Of course, we still have the state court
That's
trial
right.
to go.
And so Emmett Till III, who pleaded guilty, testified he was angry and he wanted revenge on a suspect after a suspect hit him with their car weeks before that January incident.
And he had just come back to work from that incident, and he said that he felt that he was not quite ready to come back, that he was still angry and still upset.
And he confessed and testified that he had lied about what Tyre Nichols did to justify his actions of excessive force. And then Martin confirmed that he and Officer Demetrius Haley were known as the Smash Brothers for using excessive force on suspects.
Yeah, and then former Officer Desmond Mills Jr. also testified. He was the one who became emotional on the stand. He said he was wrong for assaulting Tyre, and he lied about the assault as well to keep his job and to support his family, including a special needs child. And he said MPD has good insurance, and he didn't want to lose his job. He said, "I wish I could have stopped the punches. It hurts to watch. It hurts inside so much. I felt bad. Just to know I'm a part of that. I made this child fatherless, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry can't bring him back, but I pray his child has everything he needs growing up." That again was Officer Desmond Mills Jr.
Who's right there in the center of your screen. And so What we're going to do here coming up at 6 o'clock, we're going to present the 6 o'clock broadcast of Action News 5 and give a comprehensive overview of everything that has gone down this afternoon. We're going to go over the verdicts one more time. We're going to hopefully talk with an expert about these verdicts and what an expert might think and might assess as an objective observer of whether this was a victory or something else.
Well, the family is happy.
The family
seems to feel it's a victory. They're happy, ecstatic in some words. But again, 3 officers found guilty in different capacities, one on 4 charges, and the other 2 on just 1 charge each.
And all 5 going to jail. And the state trial yet to come. And the civil trial
yet to come.
And so this story is going to be one that's going to keep on unfolding here in our community for years.
And then we still have the DOJ investigation that has to be completed
Indeed.
And released as well.
And as we've reported in this hour, in Louisville and in Minneapolis, those take years.
Yeah. Bria Bolden is standing by again. Bria, what's going on with you?
Yeah, hey guys, we're still outside the federal court building. I can tell you, we just talked about the charges. We do know the U.S. Marshals took all 3 of the former officers into custody right after that verdict came down. This is where we suspect that the U.S. Marshals would be coming out of. We were following around Tyre Nichols' family earlier, so we are not entirely sure if they have already left the federal court building, but we did just see 2 large Sprinter vans go into the garage about 2 minutes ago. Again, the reaction outside, we haven't really seen any members of the public. We've only really seen Tyre Nichols' family and the community activists we talked to earlier, but we do know that this case was a huge case. It made worldwide international news about what happened to Tyre Nichols on January 7th, 2023. Obviously, he lost his life after that beating with former Memphis police officers, 3 of them who were on trial for more than 2 weeks at this point. We've been covering it all for you. For the reaction we talked to with community activists earlier who have been behind Tyre Nichols' family, bringing attention to what did happen to Tyre while he was in the hospital and right before he died. We talked to them earlier. One of them told me that as long as Miss Rovon Wells and Mr. Rodney Wells, Tyre Nichols' parents, were happy, that she was happy. We talked to a couple other community activists who had mixed reactions. Obviously, they stand behind the family, but they believe the fact that some of these officers were not found on all of the charges that the U.S. Department of Justice originally charged them with, they were not happy with that. Some of those officers were found on lesser charges, but overall, I knew each of them were found guilty for witness tampering. So mixed reactions from community activists. However, the family of Tyre Nichols very satisfied with this jury's verdict today. And again, we're going to be following this coverage as well, continuing into our next newscast. Again, I do want to say the U.S. Marshals did take the 3 former officers who were on trial into custody right after that verdict came down. We did see 2 Sprinter vans go into the garage there. Again, they could be associated, they could not be, but we're going to continue with this coverage. Joe and Kim, I'm going to send it back to you in the studio.
Breaking news coverage tonight here at 6 o'clock. A verdict made it in the federal trial for the 3 former Memphis police officers facing federal charges in the death of Tyre Nichols. That news coming in just over an hour ago. Mixed verdict. Not all the officers were convicted of all the charges. All 3 officers getting at least 1 guilty charge. Most not guilty, though. Demetrius Haley, count 1, deprivation of rights under color of the law. Excessive force and failure to intervene, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, guilty. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of the law. Deliberate indifference, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, guilty. Count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. In the case of Justin Smith, the former officer, count 1, deprivation of rights under color of the law, excessive force and failure to intervene, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 2, deprivation of rights under color of the law, deliberate indifference, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, not guilty. But count 4, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and Justin Smith was found guilty. And finally, Tadarius Bean, count 1, deprivation of rights under color of the law, excessive force and failure to intervene, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 2, deprivation of rights under the color of the law, deliberate indifference, not guilty. Lesser involving bodily injury, not guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to witness tamper, not guilty. But finally, count 4, the same one that Smith was found guilty of, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, guilty. And so let's go now to our reporter who has been there since the beginning, Jerry Askin, with the very latest from the federal courthouse. Jerry.
Hey, Joe, good evening. Yes, 19 days for this federal trial, the week 4, and the jury brought that verdict back within 6 hours. I was in the courtroom when that verdict was read today. As you mentioned, most of them, one officer found guilty on all counts, 2 officers found mostly not guilty, but guilty on 2 counts. I spoke with Tyre's mom, well, I saw her rather in the courtroom. She held her head down as that verdict was being read. Those officers, Justin Smith, Tadarius Bean, and Demetrius Haley, really showed no emotion as the verdict was being read. Throughout the trial, we heard from 28 witnesses, 19 from the prosecution, 9 from the defense. The most memorable testimony I can tell you was those former officers who pled guilty on federal charges, Emmett Martin III and Desmond Mills Jr. Emmett Martin III was seen on video kicking Tyre and punching Tyre. He pled guilty a month before this federal trial started. Desmond Mills Jr. was seen on video using his baton. He pled guilty last year. Now, all 3 officers who were on trial were taken into custody by the U.S. Marshal Service shortly after the verdict was read. So after the verdict was read, the family of Tyre Nichols came out of these doors and they held a miniature press conference here. And for the most part, they said they are satisfied. They said they do want, they do have justice, they believe, but they also were satisfied in the fact that these 3 officers are going to jail. I spoke with Tyre Nichols' mother exclusively before this federal trial started. She told me that she wants these officers to go to hell, is what she wanted. Well, turns out they're going to jail. So right now we are monitoring things here outside the federal building, still waiting to get reaction from defense lawyers and federal prosecutors. Every defense lawyer each gave their own closing argument. Every officer on trial had their own defense lawyer. I want to send things over now to our Action News 5's Bria Bolden. She's also here.
Come to us now.
Reaction. Hey, Bria.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. We did speak to community activists who were with Tyre Nichols' family earlier. Mixed reactions from both of them. Okay, sorry, guys. We are monitoring the situation outside of federal court. We're just watching this door right over here. We do know the former officers who were just convicted were taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals. We're monitoring this over here. This is the door we think they will likely come out of. So if you see me turning around during this broadcast, that's why we're keeping an eye on that door. But back to the community activists. They did have mixed reactions about this verdict coming down today. The first one I talked to, Paula Burris, she said as long as the family was happy, she was happy. We did talk to 2 other activists, Amber Sherman and Hunter Dempster, who had mixed reactions again to that verdict. We know that the former officers were not found guilty on all of the charges that the Justice Department originally brought forward to them. The jury did find them guilty on lesser charges for a couple of those counts, so that is what they were not satisfied with. We do know that the state case is supposed to be taking place sometime next year, so we don't know obviously how that is going to come out, but surely we'll be talking with them as well. Haven't seen a whole lot of members of the public coming out of the courthouse, or really even around the courthouse, unless they were employees. They came out before the verdict was coming down, but we're monitoring the situation out here in federal court. We still have not heard from the defense attorneys who represented the former officers, and we have not seen them get into the custodies of the U.S. Marshals. They might have already left when we were talking to Tyre Nichols' family, but we're going to be monitoring the situation out here again. Reporting live outside federal court, Bria Bolden, Action News 5.
All right, thank you so much, Bria. And now we're going to hear from the family and the attorneys for the family of Tyre Nichols in the wake of the verdict today.
All of them have been convicted of something, and they're all going to jail. That's how I feel. This has been a long journey for our family. I'm actually in shock right now because I still can't believe all this stuff is going on. But we're happy that they all have been convicted and they have been arrested.
The federal court, all 5 of them, 2 pled guilty, 3 of them have been found guilty of charges, and they all, as the judge articulated, have been taken into custody. So the family was very relieved that the killers of Tyre Nichols have been taken into custody and have been found guilty.
We got to keep pushing. You know what I'm saying? We got to keep fighting. It's other families that need help in this fight. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be activists for other families.
That was Rodney Wells, the stepfather of Tyre Nichols, talking with our Jerry Askin. We will be back with more coverage in a moment.